The mathematical reasoning section on the GED is going to test your ability on solving algebraic equations. Here's an example of a question that you might have to solve when you take the GED. If 10x plus 2 equals 7, what is the value of 2x? Well, let's first start with solving this algebraic equation of 10x plus 2 equals 7. Because if we can figure out what x is, then we can figure out what 2x is. The first thing we need to do is subtract 2 from both sides to get rid of this plus 2. So that leaves us with 10x equals 5. Now to solve for x, we undo the 10 times x by dividing both sides by 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. So this is x equals, and you can simplify 5/10 to a half, or 5/10. Now be careful, because they didn't ask what is the value of x. They didn't ask you just to solve for x. And they're expecting you not to pay attention. See this first answer? They're expecting you to solve for x and go, oh, great, there's my answer. So pay attention to what they're asking. They want 2x, which means 2 times a half. And 2 times a half is 1. So this answer would be C. So this is something that you're going to have to know how to do when you take the GED. The GED will test your knowledge of functions and patterns. Here's an example of the type of problem you'll see when you take the GED. Which of the following equations satisfies the 5 sets of numbers shown in the above table? You could start by seeing if you can figure out the pattern, meaning what do you do to x to get y? So just starting with the first set, you could multiply -2 times 2 to get -4, but it doesn't work on your next set of numbers. 3 times 2 is not 31. You could also subtract 2 from -2 to get -4. But you can't subtract 2 from 3 to get 31. So it may be more difficult to find the pattern in the table. Luckily though, you have options. Since you have multiple choice options, you can use these answer choices to test them against your table of values. That's the way we're going to approach this problem. Let's start with the first answer. Y equals 2x squared plus 7. Now, we just need to pick one set of numbers to substitute into this equation to test and see if this equation does satisfy our set of numbers. So let's just take 2 and 12. You could pick any set you wanted, but I usually like to pick one that looks a little easier, like 2 and 12. The y is 12, so replace y with 12. We're checking to see if it equals 2 times the x, which is 2, squared plus 7. Now it's really important that you follow the order of operations when simplifying this right side. And there's a cute little way to remember the order of operations, which you may have heard, and that is PEMDAS. The P stands for parentheses, the E stands for exponents, the M stands for multiplication, I'll just use a times dot, the D stands for division, the A stands for addition, and the S stands for subtraction. So that's the order that we have to simplify expressions. On this equation, we're going to start then with our exponents, because even though you see parentheses there, that's not actually what that P means. What it actually means is grouping symbols. And we have nothing grouped inside the parentheses. So in this case, the parentheses are actually just a multiplication sign. So we start right here at 2 squared, and we have, does 12 equal 2 times 4? plus 7. Now we have multiplication and addition. Multiplication comes before addition. So does 12 equal 8 plus 7? And lastly, we add, and we see that 12 does not equal 15, which means this is not our answer because that equation does not satisfy our set of numbers. Now let's try B. Y equals x cubed plus 4. So that was A. Let's try B. And we can just use the same x and y. So I'm going to replace the y again with 12 and replace the x again with 2. Follow your order of operations, which means exponents first. 2 cubed is 2 times itself 3 times. So 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. And again, we are checking to see if these are equal. 8 plus 4 is 12, so 12 equals 12. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's our answer, though. Just because it worked on one set of numbers doesn't mean it will work on all of our sets of numbers. So we need to keep testing answers. Let's try C. Y equals 2x. Same x and y. So replace y with 12 and see if that equals 2 times x, which is 2. Well, 12 does not equal 4, which means we can eliminate that as a possible answer choice. Now let's try D. Y equals 3x plus 1. Same x and y, so 12 equals 3 times 2 plus 1. Continue to follow your order of operations. So multiply first. We want to see, does 12 equal 6 plus 1? 12 does not equal 7. Therefore, that is also not our answer. Let's try E now. Y equals 6x. Again, y is 12. We want to see if that equals 6 times 2. 12 does equal 12. So this is what I was talking about, because you can have more than one equation that works on one set of numbers. So to determine which one is the correct answer, we need to test another ordered pair. So let's just pick another set of numbers. Again, you want to keep it easy. You don't want it to be too hard. How about -2 and -4? So I'm going to try same equation again, but using another set of numbers. So this time the y is -4. We want to see if that equals -2 cubed plus 4. Still following the order of operations, which means exponents first. -2 times -2 times -2 is -8 plus 4. And -8 plus 4 is -4. So we weren't sure if it equaled each other until it did in the end. So this has helped confirm that B is our answer, but we're not quite ready to circle it yet until we determine that E definitely isn't the answer. So we're going to plug in the same ordered pair into this answer choice E. So again, your y is -4, and we want to see if that equals 6 times -2. Does -4 equal -12? No. So that right there confirms that B is the correct answer because E did not work when we tried another set of numbers. There you have an example of a problem using functions or patterns that you could see when you take the GED. If you're about to take the GED, then you need to be prepared for word problems. Here I have an example of the type of problem that you'll see when you take the GED. A number n is multiplied by 3. The result is the same as when n is divided by 3. What is the value of n? Well, I'm going to start by taking all these words and turning them into an equation. So first we have n multiplied by 3. And you would just write that as 3n. because that means 3 times n. Then they say the result is the same as. Well, that's just saying equal to. So equals when n is divided by 3. And that is written as n divided by 3. Then they ask, what is the value of n? Well, couple ways to do this. Since you have the multiple choice answers, you could use those, replace n with each answer, and figure out which value of n makes this equation true. For example, if you try 1, you have 3, replace n with 1, times 1, equals, and you should put a question mark there because we're not sure if it's equal yet, 1 divided by 3. 3 times 1 is 3, and we want to know, does 3 equal a third? Well, no. 3 wholes and 1/3 of 1 whole are not the same. So since these aren't equal, that means 1 is not the value of n. And you can do that with each answer choice until you find the one that does make the equation true. Or you can solve the equation. And there's more than one way to solve the equation. You could divide both sides by 3, but then that might look kind of weird since you already have n divided by 3. So what I'll do is undo dividing n by 3 by multiplying both sides by 3. So 3 times 3n is 9n, and that's equal to, these 3's cross cancel, just n. Now you have variables on both sides. So we want to get all of our variables on one side. And you can do that by subtracting n from both sides. You have 9n's minus an n leaves you with 8n's equals n minus n is 0. Now, to solve for n, we just divide both sides by 8. So n is equal to 0 divided by anything is 0. So there you have n is 0. Let's test that out by plugging it back into our equation. So again, our equation is 3n equals n divided by 3. And since we solved our equation and got that n was 0, we're going to replace both of these n's with 0. So 3 times 0, and we want to see if it equals 0 divided by 3. 0 times anything is 0, and 0 divided by anything is 0. And 0 does equal 0. So we found our answer, that n is 0. There you have one example of the type of problem you'll see when you take the GED. If you're taking the GED, you need to be prepared to answer word problems. And you're going to have some knowledge of percentages as well. Here's a problem that combines both of those skills. Word problem, it's a word problem, and you have to be able to use percentages to solve it. A long distance runner does a first lap around a track in exactly 50 seconds. As she tires, each subsequent lap takes 20% longer than the previous one. How long does she take to run 3 laps? Well, first of all, if it takes her 50 seconds for the first one, and she's running 3, then that means 50 times 3. It's going to take her at least 150 seconds. You can already eliminate answer choice D. And since it's taking her longer for the other ones, meaning more than 50 seconds, that means it's going to take more than 50 times 3, or more than 150 seconds. So we can eliminate E as well. We've already narrowed it down, so our chances of getting this correct are even better now. So let's lay out what we know. The first lap took her 50 seconds. The second lap took 20% longer than that. So the second lap took her the 50 seconds like the first lap did, and 20% of 50 seconds. Okay, but we're going to have to do a little bit of translating here. We don't use percentages when we're calculating things, so we'll leave this 50, but we're going to change this percent into a decimal. And the way to do that is to take the decimal and 20% and move it 2 places to the left. So it's 2/10. And then of tells you to multiply, so we're going to multiply that 2/10 times 50. So we have 50 plus 2 times 50 is 100, and then there's one number behind the decimal. So it took her 10 seconds longer, because 20% of 50 is 10, and it took her 10 seconds longer than the 50 seconds for the first lap. So her second lap took her 60 seconds. The third lap we'll do similarly. It took, again, 20% longer than, and this is key here, than the previous one. So it's not going to be another 60-second lap. It took her 60 seconds and 20% of 60 seconds. So 60 plus, again, change that to a decimal, so it's 2/10. Of tells you to multiply, so times 60. So 60 seconds plus 2 times 60 is 120, and there's one number behind a decimal. So 60 plus 12, or 72 seconds. Now, since we're finding how long it took her to run all 3 laps, we need to take each one of these times and add them together. So we have 50 for the first lap, 60 for the second lap, and 72 for the third. That's 2. 7 plus 6 is 13, plus 5 is 18. So it took her 182 seconds to do all 3 laps. Answer B. So this is just one example of the type of problem you're going to see when you take the GED. If you're taking the GED, be prepared for a lot of word problems, like this one. John buys 100 shares of stock at $100 per share. The price goes up by 10%, and he sells 50 shares. Then, prices drop by 10%, and he sells his remaining 50 shares. How much did he get for the last 50? Okay, so here's what we're focused on, just the last 50. But we need to figure out what the price was of those last 50 he sold. So it started at $100 per share, which we see right there. Then it increased by 10%. It went up by 10%. So we're going to add 10% to this $100. And 10% of $100 is $10. So the new price after it went up was $110. And let me show you first how to find the 10% of $100. This is how I find 10% of anything. Basically, 10% of a number is just dividing that number by 10. And you can divide a number by 10 by taking the decimal and moving it one place to the left. So that's your $10. And you can do that with any number. Just move the decimal one place to the left, and that's 10% of that number. Okay, so this was the price after it increased by 10%. But then the prices dropped by 10%. So 10% of $110, again, we find it the same way. Just take that decimal, move it one place to the left, and that's 10% of 110. Since it dropped, we subtract the $11 from the $110, which is $99. Now we can finally find how much he sold those 50 shares for. He sold each share for $99. So it's 99 times 50, which is $4,950. So there you have one example of the kind of word problems you're going to see when you take the GED. Good luck.